Hey, how's it going? Have you ever bought a USB battery bank and based off of the capacity, you did a little rough math and figured out how many times you should be able to charge your smartphone or tablet from it, only you came to realize that you get nowhere near that? Well, I'm here to explain why that's the case, and if you're thinking the manufacturer might be lying about their capacity, that's only half true. They're actually giving you an actual capacity, but it's of the batteries inside the unit, which is actually different from the capacity that you'll get out of the unit at the voltage that your phone needs. So this video is going to be how to calculate the actual capacity of a USB battery bank. So for my example, I'm going to use the Limeade L180X. It's an 18,000 milliamp hour USB battery bank. I actually got mine from supporting Lime Fuel's Kickstarter. I think I did the $104 one. It included the battery bank as well as their 2-port wall wart to charge it with. And anyways, it died a couple days ago, so I'm going to use it as my punching bag because they just said, sorry, it's out of warranty, we can't help you, which kind of pissed me off. But okay, so let's say you have an iPhone 6 Plus and the battery capacity is 2,915 milliamp hours. And you can actually find the capacity of any phone just by searching Google for, let's say, Samsung Galaxy S5 battery capacity, and then you'll very easily be able to find the capacity. So you're looking at this saying this is 18,000 milliamp hours, and the battery is 2,915 milliamp hours. So with simple math, you should be able to figure out how many full charges you can get, right? So in this case, it'd be 6 full charges? Wrong. I'll explain why. So in the case of the Limeade, as you can see here, this is actually a picture of my Limeade, the back of the unit. It shows you the capacity. And what's interesting is they list it in milliamp hours, and they also list watt hours. Now, what surprised me is I've not seen a single article or video on this specific subject, and that kind of shocks me because anyone with any electronics knowledge should have kind of picked up at this and should have noticed something fishy. So if you take this watt hour rating and then you divide it by the 5 volts, that's how you would get your amp hour rating. So if you look at this, they say it's 18,000 milliamp hours, but if you do the math on the watt hours part by dividing the volts out of it to get back to the amp hours, you get 13,000. So obviously 18,000 is not the same as 13,000. So are they lying? No, and I'll explain why. They're just leaving out a couple vital facts. But so anyways, the Limeade L180X, it's 18,000 milliamp hours, and here's what it consists of. A tiny little control board the size of a stick of gum. Basically, it's a boost converter to convert the voltage of the cells inside up to 5 volts, which is what USB uses. It's got battery management that does short circuit protection, temperature protection, like all kinds of protection for the batteries, because LiPo battery fires are insane, so they definitely need some protection. And it controls the charging and all that other jazz. And then you got the chassis or the case that it comes in, and then the majority of a battery bank is actually just the battery cells inside. So in this case, the Limeade uses Samsung 3,000 milliamp hour batteries. They're lithium-ion cells and they're 3.7 volts. And for the tech-savvy people, if you're curious, it's the 18650 form factor. And they're shaped kind of like a AA battery, only they're a little bit bigger. There's 6 of them inside. They're hooked up in parallel, and for the people who are watching this video who are not into electronics, if you hook batteries up in parallel, you basically get one battery's worth of voltage, but you get the capacity and the current of all of them combined. So if it's 3,000 milliamp hours per cell and you have 6 cells, you get 18,000 milliamp hours. And this number should look familiar to you because that is what Limeade advertises as their capacity. And it's actually what all battery banks advertise as their capacity, but that's not actually what you'll get out of it. That's actually the capacity of the cells inside. And here is what they should put on the package. They should put 18,000 milliamp hours at 3.7 volts, and that is the voltage of the lithium cells inside the unit. And that's important because when you're charging your phones at 5 volts. The little control board inside actually boosts this up using a circuit called a boost converter up to 5 volts, which is what your phone needs to charge from. So when you do that, you actually don't get this much out of it. And here's a quick explanation for people who aren't into electronics. To get power, which is in watts, you have to take your volts times current, and current's measured in amps. So voltage and current are indirectly proportional to each other, meaning if voltage goes up, current goes down, or if current goes up, voltage goes down, because the power is the same. The batteries are going to be able to provide a static amount of power. So if one of these goes up, the other goes down. So in this case, if the voltage goes up from 3.7 volts, which is what the Samsung LiPo cell or lithium-ion cells inside are rated at, up to 5 volts, that means the current rating is going to go down. So let's do some math to figure out what the actual rating is. First, you take the milliamp hour rating that the manufacturer gives you, which is of these lithium-ion cells inside, and then you take it times the voltage of the cells, which is 3.7, and then you get 66.66 watt hours. This number should also look familiar to you because this is the rating that was on the back of the Limeade, and this is actually a better measurement of capacity. It actually is a measurement of capacity. Amp hours is not a measure of capacity, and I think it's absolutely stupid that manufacturers use it. If anything, we should be using joules, but that's a whole different discussion, so let's move on. So what we need to do is convert this back to amp hours, only amp hours at the voltage that we're going to be using. So we take that number divided by 5 volts, which is what we're going to be outputting out of your battery bank, and you get 3,332 milliamp hours. This is the actual capacity the manufacturer should be advertising on their packaging, but they don't, unfortunately. And you know, if one company decides to be honest about it and put this rating on there, this is smaller than 18,000, and people will basically see a bigger number and they'll go by the brand that lists the capacity of the batteries inside versus the one who's honest about it. And that's why none of them are honest about it. They all go by what the battery is rated at. It's pretty stupid, but it's marketing, and I kind of halfway don't blame them, because if they went with this number, it looks smaller than this number and people wouldn't buy it, versus one of their competitors who's using this value. So anyways, nothing is perfect in the real world, so we have to take into account losses from inefficiencies. So if you want to see the actual capacity that you would be able to get into your phone or tablet's batteries, we have to figure in losses. So a really good rough number would be 80%. So if we take this number, which is what we said is the actual capacity, take it times 80% to make up for losses, we end up with 10,665 milliamp hours. And I put an asterisk here because I'm going to explain what losses we're talking about here. So if we take this number and then we divide it by the size of our iPhone battery, which is 2,915 milliamp hours, we should be able to get 3.7 full charges of an iPhone 6 Plus. And you could do the same math, just replace this with whatever the capacity of your own phone battery is to figure out what this specific model of Limeade Lime Fuel L180X would be able to charge your phone from empty to full. So, like I said, the asterisk here, this is assuming that the boost converter inside your battery bank is losing about 10%, meaning it's 90% efficient. But then that's not it. Now, that would be the, if we just did 10% loss, that would be the actual output your battery bank has. But there are more losses than just that. There's losses in the USB cable, and there's also a loss in your phone's charging circuit. And then there's also loss at the actual battery. You can't get every electron's worth of energy that you're pumping into the battery out of it, because if you ever feel a smartphone while it's charging, they get warm. And that heat is not coming from anywhere. The law of conservation of energy says that you can't create or destroy energy. It can only be converted from one form to another. So if you're feeling heat, that's basically electrical energy that was lost and turned into heat energy. So that's kind of why I went with 80%. That gives you a pretty, what I would say is a pretty good ballpark of how much of the energy will actually make it into your battery, which, so if you have this Limeade, and I can confirm I own this Limeade and I've charged my phone with it, you do get about 3 full charges and then a little bit more. So now you're saying, how do we know you're not lying about this? Show us some proof, show us some credentials. Okay, we can do that. Like I said, if we're just going off of how much energy is actually coming out of the battery pack, I would say the boost converters in most of these are probably pretty close to 90% efficient. So if we take our actual rating and then we take it times 90%, we end up with just about 12,000 amp hours, or milliamp hours, sorry. or 12 amp hours. Okay, so as you can see here on this little tiny screen, this is a circuit I designed to basically draw a specific amount of current from any USB power bank or wall wart charger that I hook up to it. And I basically charged my limeade all the way until it was full, and you know, it basically shut off, or the light, I think the light stayed solid green, letting you know that it's full. I plugged it in to my circuit, and I had it draw at 1.5 amps. It's kind of the middle ground. Some phones will charge at 1 amp, some will charge at 2.1 amps. I did 1.5 amps, so it's kind of in the middle of the road. Now, the efficiency will be slightly different depending on what current you draw it at, but I went with 1.5 amps. As you can see here, the capacity I ended up getting out of it was 12.13 amp hours. So, as you can see, my math actually got that very, very close to what we actually tested to find it to be in real life. And you can see they said 66.66 watt hours, and as you can see in my little screenshot here of my testing circuit, it only got 56.27 watt hours. But like I said, that's going to be from inefficiencies in the actual boost converter circuit in your battery bank that's bumping the voltage up to the 5 volts that your phone needs. So, and the reason we have 90% is because we're just measuring what's coming out of it. Now, the other 10%, because I said 80% earlier, that other 10% is actually the loss inside your phone. So your phone's charging circuitry inside the actual cable going to your phone, and the actual battery efficiency at taking in current from a charger. So anyways, to sum this up really quickly, and what most of you probably came here for, is how to quickly calculate the actual capacity of a battery bank. So you take the rating that they advertise, and then you take it times 3.7. You divide that result by 5, and then you take that times 0.9, and then that's it. Now, if you're wanting to actually see how much will get into your smartphone's battery, you want to see how many full charges you can get. For step 3, instead of using 0.9, use 0.8, which would be 80%. And that would be roughly what would make it into your phone's battery. So you could take that number and divide it by the size of your smartphone's battery, and that should give you a pretty accurate, sort of rough estimate of how many times you should be able to charge your smartphone from a fully charged battery bank. And what we'll do now is we'll go to Amazon, and I'll just pick a couple random battery banks, and then we'll do the math live, and then you'll kind of get an idea of how you could do this yourself. Okay, so we're at Amazon, and let's find a battery bank. First, let's just go for limeade, since that's already what we've been doing. So we'll get our calculator, our Windows calculator here. So this top one right here says it's 24,000 milliamp hour. So take 24,000 times 3.7, and then we divide that number by 5, and then we take that. So for this example, let's figure out how many times we'd be able to charge our phone. So we'll take this times 0.8, so 80% efficiency, and then 14,208 milliamp hours is what should be able to get into your phone. So we'll divide that by 2915, which is the capacity of an iPhone 6 Plus, which is what I have. I should be able to charge it just under 5 full charges. So there you go. Let's find a different one. Battery, charger, bank, USB. I don't know. There we go. Okay. Kmashi. I'm going to stick with name brand ones because some of these are probably exaggerating a little bit about their actual power capacity. So here's Anchor. I know Anchor's a good known brand. So we'll take 5,200 milliamp hours times 3.7, divide it by 5, and then we'll take it times 8, or 80% I mean, and then we end up with 3,078 milliamp hours. Divide that by your phone's battery capacity. In my case, it's 2915 milliamp hours, and I should be able to charge my phone from empty 1 full time, roughly. Let's see. Freemo, I think, is another decent brand. 11,000 milliamp hours times 3.7 volts. Divide that by 5. Take that times 80%. And then we divide that by your phone's capacity. And then, in my case, the iPhone 6 Plus should be able to do 2 full charges from empty using this full battery bank. Power add, let's do that. 5,000 milliamp hour times 3.7 divided by 5 times 80%, and then we divide it by your phone's capacity, battery capacity, and then we get basically 1 full charge. So that right there should show you roughly how many times you should be able to charge your smartphone just by doing some really, really simple math. And now these numbers aren't going to be accurate, 100% accurate, because some of these will be more efficient than others. And so some of these might actually get better than what we just showed. Some of these might actually get worse, and it just depends on the unit. And there are exceptions. If you have one of those battery banks that has like a 120 volt power outlet, and basically those have 12 volt batteries inside of them usually. They might have a 6 volt battery. If that's the case, instead of using 3.7 volts, you would use 12 volts, but the rest of the math should be the same. And I can actually show you an example. So what I have here is some data that I borrowed from a video that MJ Lorton did. I'll link to his channel down in the description of this video. He did a really detailed test of a bunch of battery banks, but unfortunately he assumed that he went off of the capacity that the manufacturer advertises, and then when he actually did a load test on them to see how much capacity they actually have, he did the math to compare, and most of them turned out to only be like 50 or 60% efficient, but I don't think he knew any of the information I'm basically teaching you in this video. So what I did is took his data, and then we're going to do the rough math, and then you can see what the actual efficiency is. And these are all in the same order that he had in his spreadsheet, the units. So this first row right here, this is what the company advertises. The second row is the adjusted amount, which is doing our math that I just showed you how to do. So as you can see, it's taking the advertised value, taking it times 3.7, and then dividing it by 5. So this is the actual value if you do the math that I showed you how to do. And then measured is how much he actually found each of these had in them after he used his test equipment on his workbench to basically find out how much capacity these actually had in them. So then I just did the math to get the actual efficiency of the units. So if you look, these numbers are pretty close. So if with our math, there should be about 7,696 milliamp hours, and then look, he got 6,700. That's actually pretty close. So the efficiency of that unit's 87%. This Anchor one, we did the math to see that it's actually 11,100 milliamp hours, and then what he actually got was 8,000. So in that case, it's only 73% efficient. But look at this EasyAC one. 7,400 is what our math said the actual capacity is, and look, he got 7,200. It's pretty close. Now there is an exception, like I said, and it is, where is it? This one, Goal Zero Yeti. This is one that has 12 volt batteries inside. They're lead acid. They're not lithium. So instead of 3.7 volts, you have to do the math using 12 volts. That's why right here, instead of 3.7, I have 12 volts. Oops. So that's why the actual capacity at 5 volts is much higher than they advertised, which is kind of backwards from the rest of them. So like I said, if voltage goes up, current goes down, but it's also the other way around. If voltage goes down, current goes up. So in this case, there's a 12 volt battery inside, and we're bringing that down. So this rating of 14,000 milliamp hours is at 12 volts. So if we bring that 12 volts down using the buck converter that's built inside that unit down to 5 volts, that means the current's going to go up, and that's why you get such a large capacity out of that one. And in that case, it's 68% efficient. So these numbers, as you can see, are a lot higher than what MJ Lorton showed in his video. And I don't think he'll mind. He's a very thorough guy, and I know him seeing this video and realizing this, he'll probably be happy to learn why his numbers are off so much. And some of these, as you can see, that one's 89% efficient, 86%, 81, 80, 93. And I actually put my own result at the end here. This is mine. So they advertised 13,320 milliamp hours is what the actual is, and then when I tested it, I got 12,130 milliamp hours. So it's 91% efficient. So anyways, that was kind of a long video. Sorry about that, but there's a lot to cover. So technically speaking, the manufacturers aren't really lying about the capacity. The rating is just of the batteries inside the unit. What makes it out of the unit is what you can figure out by using the simple math that I showed you in this video. So, yep, that's it, and see you for the next video.